Did you know that the S in PTSD often is you? In my eyes, the most stressful thing for me is to be with other people, around other people, doing things with other people. I want to explain why that is. I want to explain why it's not your fault. But I also want to explain why it colors every interaction that I have with anybody I talk to. All that and more coming up on STP today. Let's go.
Welcome to Shattered the podcast.
Sharing the lived experience of mental illness on
A father,
a mother.
A family.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
So, what does the S stand for in post traumatic stress? It stands for stress, obviously. But I, in my own way, think about that S as being you. My mental illness is tough to live with. It always has been, it always will be. But the main stress that I feel now is in dealing with other people. If I can sit at home with my wife and just hang out, I am a happy, happy man. As soon as I walk out those front doors, though, the S becomes every person I bump into, every person I have to interact with. I get the privilege of going into a lot of different schools to speak about mental illness with an organization called MEACT. MEACT. Check them out. And I love doing it. But it's hard yards. It's hard initially to first off just go to a new place. Generally, it's a new place for me. It's a school. The idea, the process of making it happen so that I can participate is an effort of will. It has gotten easier, but it is exhausting. I've said before, I know that I only have a few good hours in every day. I've only got a limited amount of time that I am going to be able to function as well as I hope. And if I go over that time, I know that my performance starts to drop off. People might not even see the change, but my mental abilities slow down dramatically. The screaming in my head gets louder. The noise in my head, that background static, starts to drown out what people say. And I was in a classroom the other day, and by the end of the day, I could barely hear one of the kids talking amongst all the other noises in the room. At the beginning of the day, no worries at all. By the end of the day, I just I had to ask everybody to just be quiet, and I don't normally do that. Ask the kids to just be to shush because I can't hear. And it's not necessarily because the child is quiet, it's because the noise in my head, the exhaustion has taken over. I've talked about an emotional tsunami. One of the things that people talk about is the noise of a tsunami once it crashes in, how overpowering just the simple noise is. And that's what it's like when you get a tsunami of emotion. The noise in my head just gets to a point where I can't hear outside of my head unless I make an effort of will to focus on something. So I've showed up at a school. I've gotten over that first initial hurdle, going to a new place, seeing new people. Then I've got to interact with my colleagues. Probably half the time, this process is very, very easy for me. I've already built myself up. I've got a bit of momentum going emotionally. And I'm okay to interact. meeting and greeting people who are my equals is easy, is comfortable. But there are times when it's not. I go back to a time when a woman that I worked with came up to me and just explained to me how difficult she found it to interact with me, and how it seemed as if I was avoiding her. It didn't occur to me till the other day that I actually was. Because I wasn't able to interact on my own terms the first time I spoke to them, I never found a way to ground myself in that conversation. I never found a way to ground myself in that relationship. So the discomfort that I felt was palpable. And I noticed this because I've got a colleague at MEACT that I need to just sit down with, because I know that my attitude or my lack of ability to be able to interact with her, it looks weird and it feels weird. And it's simply because I just cannot find that common ground to um, create a situation where we can interact freely, which is what I want people to do. I want people to feel like they can talk to me and tell me things and that I'm interested in them. And I think about this woman that I used to work with, and because she didn't feel that, it affected her. And that's something that I'm very aware of, that I try not to do. It all comes down to this thought and this process in my mind where people, I feel that people are constantly disappointed in me, or are about to be disappointed in me. I feel like I'm going to let everybody that I meet down. And I'm constantly struggling against that feeling because it's not real. It's not anything that's outside of my mental illness. My wife will tell you I have a natural kind of inclination to downplay my own abilities, my own effect. This is a problem that in many ways is insurmountable. It takes a massive amount of understanding on a person's behalf to recognize and understand that even though the person standing in front of you may seem extremely confident and extremely capable, maybe even extremely outgoing, inside they may be struggling. That is often me. Some of the most constructive conversations that I have, I'll walk away from just going, oh, I wish I hadn't have said this. Why did I say that? And it becomes easier to just not talk to people, to be a shadow in the back of the room. It becomes so much easier. It's not healthier, especially for me as an extrovert. As an extrovert, I gain momentum from chatting to people. It energizes me, and it helps me to be creative, and helps me to um, have a positive outlook, even though it's hard. Other people being the stress. It's an interesting thing because I know why people walk around on eggshells at times with people with mental illness, because I do it. It's just interesting to me that the eggshells are the ones that I've planted on the ground. They're my eggshells. It's not that somebody else is making life complicated or hard. It's the fact that I am struggling. Now, while all that I've said to you is 100% true, we need to find a way for people to interact with me that is going to be positive and it's going to be constructive. How do you do that? I think it's by understanding that at times the person standing in front of you may be very different from the person that you think you know. And recognizing that at times that distance that you feel has got nothing to do with you. It's got to do with energy. I go back to the tsunami. The tides are affected by a tsunami. Tsunami comes in, cleans up the ocean, pulls everything back. But it affects the tides. The natural ebb and flow will be altered because of this catastrophic event. So while there still will be tides, for a little while, it's going to be very, very different to what you're used to. And that's the way it is when you're dealing with a person with a mental illness is sometimes they're in the middle of that tsunami and they're not themselves. You might not even see the tsunami. It might be after the tsunami, post-tsunami. And you're there just going, why aren't they interacting normally? What is it about them that's going on? And do you pity them? Do you feel sorry for them? Do you walk on eggshells with them? No, you act normally. Act the same way that you would at any other stage. Just maybe you're doing all right. Is there anything you need? I was in a classroom with a woman the other day, and it was getting difficult. Kids were being boisterous. They weren't paying attention. They weren't giving her the respect as an instructor that I believed she was due. And it was really upsetting me. And I walked over to her and I just had to, I just said, I just need to breathe for a minute. And I just loved. She just said, mate, go outside. Just leave the room for a minute. Thankfully, I had the strength to be able to say, no, I just need to breathe for a few minutes. But I know that even a couple of years ago, that situation, I would have run out of that room as fast as I could and I wouldn't have come back. I would have walked straight to my car. I would have driven home because that's all I would be emotionally capable of. But it was thanks to her kindness and giving me that option, understanding that, okay, maybe the tides are a little bit different at the moment. Maybe this isn't the mark that I think I know, but that's okay. I try to learn to forgive myself. It's very, very hard to do. Forgive myself for the little stuff ups, the miscommunication, the missed words, the email, the text that I didn't send. And it's true that forgiving somebody else is a lot easier than forgiving yourself. But I'm finding more and more that reflection, part of mindfulness, where you look back on the things where you did succeed, are the times that you find the hope that isn't in front of you. Strange, because your hope is behind you. Because now I'm better than I used to be. And that's a cause for hope. I want to thank you for checking out Shattered the podcast. Don't forget my book is available on Amazon. It's $3 or $4 at the moment. It's very, very cheap. Love for you to have a read. Let me know what you think. Have a great week. And don't forget, I'm going to drop a very, very special episode. It's my parents' wedding anniversary. And I've just done a very short tribute for them. So check that out. Have a great week, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Shattered the podcast. I'd like to thank our producer, Meredith Brosnan, our executive producer, Torian Lau, and the band Adelaide for allowing us to use their song as our theme. Go to shatteredthepodcast.com for more information.